Ah, ben oui, parce que ça fait tellement que je... Fait que j'ai mon...
minutes of statements, and then we have till 10:50 they have our stop.
They have a hard stop at 10:15?
5:0.
10:50.
It's okay, I made the same
10:50. Gotcha.
I made the same mistake. You guys almost watched me lick.
Teacup cool. Yeah.
That's each. Come on.
Heads up. Bon matin tout le monde. Bonjour, bonjour. Ça va bien?
Hello.
Morning, everyone. You're so serious.
Yeah, please don't get up. Yeah. Bonjour Valérie.
Madame.
Bon, tu nous lances ça?
Good morning. Welcome to the National Press Theatre. My name is Mia Rabson, and I am with the Canadian Press, and I will be moderating this morning. Before we begin, we have a few important preventative measures to share to prevent disruptive and potentially harmful audio feedback incidents that can cause injuries. We remind all in-person participants to keep their earpieces away from all microphones at all times. When you are not using your earpiece, please place it face down on the middle of the sticker for this purpose that you will find on the table. Please consult the cards on the table for guidelines to prevent audio feedback incidents. These measures are in place so that we can protect the health and safety of all participants, including the interpreters, and conduct our business without interruption. Thank you all for your cooperation. We have with us today Finance Minister Dominic LeBlanc, Foreign Affairs Minister Mélanie Joly, and Industry Minister François-Philippe Champagne. I believe they have about 15 minutes of talk between them, and then we will take questions mostly from the room. We'll try to get online, but there are a lot of people. Please let me know if I haven't spoken to you. Let me know that you will have a question.
So Mia, thank you. I'll be taking about 20 minutes myself, and then the others could share the rest of the time. That's a joke. Bonjour, bonjour à tous et à toutes. Plus tôt aujourd'hui, les États-Unis ont imposé des droits de douane de 25% sur les produits d'acier et d'aluminium du Canada. Ces tarifs, comme on a toujours dit, sont totalement injustifiés, injustes et franchement déraisonnables. As has been the case since the American president first threatened to put tariffs on Canadian exports to the United States, our sole focus is to stand up for Canadian interests, Canadian jobs, and Canadian workers. It has been extremely heartening to see Canadians from across the country rally to this cause in defense of Canada. I would also like to thank the premiers from across the country for their work on these important matters. I know Canadians are proud to see their governments stick up for their respective provinces and territories, and also, of course, stick up for the whole country. Together, we will do what we must do to protect Canada's economy. With these most recent tariffs on Canadian steel and aluminum, the U.S. administration is once again inserting disruption and disorder into an incredibly successful trading partnership and raising the costs of everyday goods for Canadians and American households alike. We will not stand idly by while our iconic steel and aluminum industries are being unfairly targeted. Today, I am announcing that the Government of Canada, following a dollar-for-dollar approach, will be imposing, as of 12:01 a.m. tomorrow, March 13, 2025, 25% reciprocal tariffs on an additional $29.8 billion of imports from the United States. This includes steel products worth $12.6 billion and aluminum products worth $3 billion, as well as additional imported U.S. goods worth $14.2 billion for a total of $29.8 billion. The list of additional products affected by counter tariffs includes computers, sports equipment, and cast iron products as examples. These tariffs are in addition to Canada's 25% counter tariffs on $30 billion of imports from the United States in response to U.S. tariffs put in place on March 4th. In addition, we learned yesterday that the United States tariffs would also be imposed on steel and aluminum content in certain derivative products. The government is currently assessing this aspect and may impose, of course, further tariffs in response to this measure as well. Aujourd'hui, j'annonce que le gouvernement du Canada, suivant une approche dollar pour dollar, imposera à partir de minuit et 1 minute demain, le 13 mars 2025, des droits de douane réciproques de 25% sur 29,8 milliards de dollars d'importations supplémentaires en provenance des États-Unis. Cela comprend des produits en acier d'une valeur de 12,6 milliards de dollars et des produits en aluminium d'une valeur de 3 milliards de dollars, ainsi que des produits américains supplémentaires d'une valeur de 14,2 milliards de dollars pour une valeur totale de 29,8 milliards de dollars. La liste des produits supplémentaires concernés par les contre-tarifs comprend des outils, des ordinateurs, des équipements de sport et des produits en fonte. Ces droits de douane s'ajoutent aux droits de douane réciproques de 25% appliqués par le Canada sur 30 milliards de dollars d'importations en provenance des États-Unis en réponse aux droits de douane américains imposés, comme vous savez, le 4 mars. Hier, nous avons également appris que les droits de douane américains seraient également imposés sur l'acier et l'aluminium contenus dans certains produits dérivés. Le gouvernement évalue actuellement cet aspect et pourra imposer évidemment d'autres contre-tarifs en réponse. Our government is also taking steps to mitigate the impact of these countermeasures on Canadian workers and businesses by considering requests for exceptional relief through the existing remissions process. We understand that these are challenging, uncertain times for Canadian businesses and Canadian workers. That's why we've deployed measures to support workers and businesses. Export Development Canada, the Business Development Bank of Canada, and Farm Credit Corporation are there to help business owners find new markets for their products and access financing to help with liquidity crunches. We have also introduced temporary flexibilities to the Employment Insurance Work-Sharing Program, helping affected businesses keep more employees on the payroll in the event of a slowdown. Notre gouvernement utilisera tous les outils à sa disposition pour soutenir nos entreprises et nos travailleurs en ces temps difficiles. D'autres mesures pour aider les travailleurs et les entreprises pourraient être annoncées au besoin et je suis très encouragé encore une fois par la volonté des provinces et des territoires aussi de travailler avec nous afin d'appuyer les secteurs économiques dans leur région. Notre gouvernement continuera de travailler sans relâche afin de convaincre l'administration de M. Trump d'abandonner entièrement ses droits de douane totalement injustifiés. We will use every tool at our disposal to defend Canadian jobs and Canadian businesses and support workers through these challenging times. And with that, I'm happy to pass the microphone to my colleague, Mélanie Joly. Mélanie.
Yes, merci, Dominic. Thank you all for joining us today. You've just heard the actions we're taking from my colleague and friend, Dominic Leblanc. Canada is holding strong and will continue to do so together. Well, make no mistake, though, this is going to be a day-to-day fight. This is now the second round of unjustified tariffs leveled against Canada and Canadian goods. The excuse for the first round was exaggerated claims about our border. We addressed all the concerns raised by the U.S., and in return, they agreed to temporarily abide by the free trade agreement President Trump signed himself with Canada. The latest excuse is national security, despite the fact that Canadian steel and aluminum add to America's security, not take away from it. All the while, there is a threat to further and broader tariffs on April 2nd still looming. The excuse for those tariffs shifts every day. The only constant in this unjustified and unjustifiable trade war seems to be President Trump's talks of annexing our country through economic coercion. Yesterday, he called our border a fictional line and repeated his disrespectful 51st state rhetoric. Well, Canadians have made it very clear that we will not back down and we will not give in to this coercion. À mes concitoyens canadiens, je tiens à vous rappeler que nous n'avons rien fait pour justifier les actions du président Trump contre notre pays. Et nous n'avons rien fait pour justifier ses attaques contre notre économie et notre identité. Nous ferons cependant tout pour riposter. Et nous n'allons jamais négocier contre nous-mêmes. Nous continuerons à être solidaires et votre gouvernement sera là pour continuer à vous soutenir. Entre-temps, on continue d'acheter canadien et entre-temps, on continue de soutenir notre monde. Maintenant, je pense à notre monde au Saguenay-Lac-Saint-Jean, sur la Côte-Nord, à Sorel. I'm thinking about the people in Hamilton, in also the Sioux, in Regina, in Kitimat. People working in the steel and aluminum sectors. Pour nos travailleurs et travailleuses dans l'industrie de l'acier et de l'aluminium, nous sommes ici pour vous. Nous avons pris des mesures fortes en 2018 lorsque le président Trump nous a imposé des droits de douane et nous continuerons à le faire. Les droits de douane sur l'acier et l'aluminium étaient injustifiés en 2018 et ils demeurent injustifiés aujourd'hui. I now would like to talk to the American people, to our American friends. I want you to remember this. Canada is your best friend, best neighbor, and best ally. Many of us have family on both sides of the border. Canada is also America's best and biggest customer. We buy more American goods than the UK, France, China, and Japan altogether. Together, we have spent generations building a relationship between our countries that is the envy of the world. Canada is not the one driving up the cost of your groceries or of your gasoline or any of your construction. Canada is not the one putting your jobs at risk. Canada is not the one that is ultimately starting this war. President Trump's tariffs against you are causing that. And there are no winners in a trade war. American friends, help us help you. Please help us end these tariffs as quickly as possible. And please talk to your elected representatives at the federal, at the state and municipal level. Please talk to your governors to your senators, to your House representatives, and to your mayors. Send the message to the White House. Working together, Canada and the U.S. have built a strong enough economy, and working together, we can bring down inflation and bring stability to the markets. To my European colleagues, we will work together to put pressure to end these tariffs against you too. À mes collègues en Europe et dans le monde entier, je dis depuis longtemps que le Canada est le canari dans la mine. Que si les États-Unis peuvent nous faire ça à nous, leur allié et ami le plus proche, aucun d'entre vous en est exempt. Aujourd'hui, ces droits de douane injustifiés ont été imposés à vous aussi. Alors, travaillons ensemble pour les faire lever. Travaillons ensemble pour encourager les Américains à faire pression sur leurs représentants élus. Ensemble, nous avons réussi à lutter contre les droits de douane sur l'acier et l'aluminium en 2018 et nous pouvons le faire à nouveau. After this, I'm heading to the G7 Foreign Ministers meeting in Charlevoix, Quebec. I'll be meeting with Secretary Rubio. I will also be meeting with my European and British counterparts. In every single meeting, I will raise the issue of tariffs to coordinate our response with the Europeans and to put pressure on the Americans. This is much more than about our economy. It is about the future of our country. Canadian sovereignty and identity are non-negotiable. Canadians have had enough, and we are a strong country. We will defend our sovereignty, we'll defend our jobs, and we'll defend our way of living. And we will do so all together every single day and one day at a time. Thank you.
Bon matin tout le monde, bonjour tout le monde. Nous vivons l'un des moments les plus sérieux dans l'histoire du Canada. Aujourd'hui, les États-Unis poursuivent leur assaut tarifaire contre le Canada avec l'imposition de droits de douane de 25 % sur notre acier et notre aluminium. Ces droits de douane sont non seulement inacceptables, ils sont injustifiés. Ils auront un impact économique négatif considérable, comme le disaient mes collègues, des deux côtés de la frontière. As we have always said to our American friend, tariffs on Canada is a tax on American. And as I've seen someone yesterday saying, these tariffs are bringing the Wild West on the factory floors across North America. This needs to stop. This is hurtful for workers. This is hurtful for industry. This is hurtful for the competitiveness of North America. Canadian steel and aluminum are essential for North America. And we live in a time, as my colleagues have said, that where you see a nexus between economic security and national security. We need to preserve what we have achieved over generations. From energy to defense, to automotive, shipbuilding, and countless other sectors of our economy, Canadian steel and aluminum fuel North American supply chains. Actually, I was with the association representing aluminum. So one job in the United States, one job in Canada in the primary aluminum sector support 13 jobs in the United States. That's the ratio 1 to 13. This is how integrated we are when it comes to steel and aluminum in North America. But let's be clear. This is more than just about supply chains and big industry. This is about people. This is about our workers. This is about families and community all across this country and across the United States. They are the ones paying the price. This uncertainty is creating anxiety across North America, and we need to work together to stop that. Les secteurs de l'acier et de l'aluminium représentent plus de 150 000 travailleurs partout au Canada. Chaque jour, ces travailleurs aident à bâtir notre grand pays. C'est pourquoi aujourd'hui, devant ces tarifs injustifiés, on réplique avec des contre-mesures robustes, comme l'a indiqué mon collègue, le ministre Leblanc. Ces tarifs vont avoir un impact direct sur les différents secteurs de l'économie des deux côtés de la frontière. That's why today, we're hitting back against these unjustified U.S. tariffs. We're not alone in doing that, as Minister Joly said. The European Union has reacted. Our friends and allies in Japan have reacted. The world is reacting against these unjustified tariffs. But let me be clear. This is not something that we want to do. This is not something that we like to do. But it's something that unfortunately we are being forced to do in order to protect our way of living in this country and to protect North America. Make no mistake, today's decision by the U.S. will increase costs for consumers. Mr. Joly was right. When you're talking to our American friends, we need to make them clear. This is going to increase the price of construction. This is going to increase the price of car. This is going to increase the price in the defense industry. It will put thousands of jobs at risk, and I would add unnecessarily. And it will weaken North America's economic and national security. My dear friends, whether you're in Canada or in the United States, we cannot let uncertainty become the new certainty in North America. That cannot stand. That will make us less competitive. That's going to weaken us, and that's going to affect our economic security and ultimately our national security. Ce climat d'incertitude doit évidemment cesser. Et ce n'est pas seulement moi qui le dis, mais je vous invite à regarder les déclarations du PDG de Ford, du PDG d'Alcoa récemment, qui a parlé de chaos et de coûts à l'intérieur de différents secteurs de l'industrie. Demandez aux gouverneurs, aux maires, aux associations d'affaires au sud de la frontière, demandez à Wall Street, regardez l'impact des marchés financiers. Les marchés ont parlé, les tarifs vont faire mal à l'économie américaine. As we have always said, we will continue to stand up for Canada by supporting and defending our workers and our industries, and I would say our way of living as Canadian. But we also need to change our attitude. We need to change our posture, and we need to change our way of doing things in this country. This needs to be more than just a moment. It needs to be a movement to become more resilient in this country, a movement to become more confident in this country, a movement to become more ambitious in this country, and a movement to be more Canadian in this country. There's many ways for us to do that. I've said many times to Canadians, the best way to do that, the biggest power we have is our purchasing power. As my colleague have said, we can start to buy local. We can buy Canadian. Because after all, we're the largest customer to the United States of America. We will diversify our industry, we will diversify our exports, but we can also choose to buy local. That's going to make a difference to the small and medium-sized business across our country. Tomorrow, Minister Leblanc and I are planning to join Premier Ford in Washington to convey these messages as forcefully as Canadians can do. In conclusion, let's stop with this tariff nonsense. And let's work together to make North America more competitive, more innovative, and more resilient. Our people on both sides of the border expect nothing less from us. Merci tout le monde. À vous.
Thank you, ministers. We do have many more, I think 10 questions in the room, so we may not get to the online, but we will try. We'll start with Valérie Gamache from Radio-Canada. One question, one follow, please.
Bonjour à vous trois. Hier, il y a eu beaucoup de bruit avec l'intervention notamment de Doug Ford dans le dossier. On se retrouve en pleine période de transition entre M. Trudeau et M. Carney. Est-ce que l'absence d'un répondant direct à Donald Trump actuellement nuit au Canada?
In English and French, please. Tu le prends ou je prends?
Répondant direct, on vient de répondre. Vous avez vu une réponse très directe ce matin. Le gouvernement prend ses responsabilités comme il se doit. Vous avez vu ce matin une réponse ferme, cohérente. Ce n'est pas une surprise. On avait dit qu'on allait répondre d'une façon mesurée, proportionnelle. C'est ça que nous avons fait aujourd'hui. Alors, le gouvernement continue de prendre ses responsabilités et on va continuer de le faire.
Moi, ce que je dirais aussi, c'est que le plus important présentement, c'est qu'il y ait une unité au sein du Canada. Parce qu'on sait que les Américains vont être divisés. Et donc, basé là-dessus, on va continuer à démontrer du leadership, comme on le fait au niveau fédéral. On va soutenir aussi les premiers ministres qui démontrent du leadership ensemble. Parce qu'au final, ce qu'on doit faire, c'est faire reculer les Américains. So what I would say in English is, right now, the most important thing is Canada's unity. Because what we know is that the Americans themselves are divided. And so what you're seeing today is leadership on the part of the federal government, and also we'll continue to work with the premiers that are showing leadership as well, because we need to fight back against this nonsense.
Et je comprends que demain, vous partez à Washington, M. Leblanc et Champagne. C'est quoi l'objectif de la rencontre là-bas, est-ce que c'est de réouvrir et de devancer la négociation de la CEUM? Est-ce que, ou on est dans régler la question très, très ici maintenant, là?
Ben, je peux peut-être débuter, François-Philippe peut ajouter. Non, on ne va pas renégocier ou même commencer une discussion sur la question de renégocier le CEUM. Premièrement, il n'y a personne qui a avancé cette idée-là. C'est une responsabilité nationale. Il y a une révision dans l'entente qui se fera en 2026. Si des partis veulent avancer ces dettes-là, mais ils le feront. Demain, la discussion sera sur l'urgence de diminuer la température, d'enlever les tarifs douaniers qui sont appliqués sur l'acier et l'aluminium aujourd'hui. Le secrétaire Lutnick a un mandat d'arriver au début avril, le 2 avril, avec les mesures surtout globales, les mesures qui vont examiner leurs relations avec tous les pays. Mes discussions avec le secrétaire Lutnick sont vraiment tournées vers cette décision-là du 2 avril. On va faire tout ce qu'il faut faire pour enlever le Canada des mesures qui se sont appliquées depuis déjà une dizaine de jours et arriver à une discussion, à un résultat le 2 avril qui, j'espère, est plus cohérent que qu'est-ce qu'on a vu au cours des prochaines semaines. Alors, ce sera ça l'objectif de nos discussions et on sera évidemment prêt à retourner la semaine prochaine. On est toujours prêt à travailler avec le gouvernement de M. Trump sur l'objectif d'enlever les tarifs douaniers qui s'appliquent injustement à l'économie du Canada.
Non, je vous dirais, c'est...
So sure, in English, and then François-Philippe can add, the discussion tomorrow, it's not about renegotiating the USMCA. That is not the purpose of the conversation tomorrow. The conversation tomorrow will be what can we do to deal with this completely unjustified application of tariffs to steel and aluminum from Canada that came into effect today. The, again, unjustified decision of March 4th. As you know, certain products that are compliant with the agreement were exempted until April 2nd. All of that points to a conversation that we've been having with the Trump administration around getting to April 2nd with the objective of obviously removing all of these tariffs that are applying to the Canadian economy. We will continue to maintain our countermeasures and increase them on April 2nd. This is no surprise to the American administration if we can't get to a position where their initial measures are all lifted from Canadian businesses. So the conversation tomorrow will be around lowering the temperature and focusing on the process that President Trump set up, where Secretary Lutnick has up to April 2nd to determine a series of global tariff decisions. Obviously, we think that they should respect the agreement that President Trump signed, the Canada-U.S. Mexico Free Trade Agreement. In the agreement itself, there's a provision to have a review in 2026. It's not a renegotiation, it's a review. If one of the three parties wants to, at some point, begin a process of that review earlier, then of course Canada would be ready. We've always said the best approach is a coherent conversation that looks at all of these issues where the three economies are part of the conversation and where we can arrive at the best agreement for North America. That's been the success of previous conversations, but for the moment it's difficult to get there because day over day, week over week, you have these decisions. So if we can sort of clear the underbrush and get to a position where we can get to April 2nd with a coherent plan, I certainly think that would be the objective of the conversation tomorrow, and it continues on conversations we've been having over recent weeks as well.
Je pense que Dominique l'a bien dit. Demain, pour être clair devant les Canadiens et Canadiennes qui nous regardent, il n'y a pas de début de renégociation, évidemment, de l'accord de libre-échange. Par contre, moi, ce que j'entends amener avec le ministre Leblanc à la table, c'est vraiment de nous ramener dans un mode où il y a plus de certitude. Moi, je le dis souvent, l'incertitude ne peut pas devenir la nouvelle certitude. J'ai rencontré plusieurs des dirigeants. J'ai été en contact hier dans l'industrie de l'aluminium et de l'acier. Mais vous savez, regardez la dernière semaine qu'on a eue. Ce genre de mouvement-là qu'on a vu dans les tarifs, ça rend vraiment les chaînes d'approvisionnement plus fragiles à travers l'Amérique du Nord. c'est clair que les dirigeants nous disent une chose, on ne peut pas fonctionner dans un monde comme ça. Nos chaînes d'approvisionnement ont été établies depuis des décennies. Moi, mon message à M. Lutnick va être simple. Les marchés vous parlent. Regardez la capitalisation boursière depuis les dernières semaines. Je pense qu'il s'est perdu 4 trillions de dollars dans les marchés boursiers aux États-Unis depuis les dernières semaines. Les entreprises vous parlent. Il y a eu une grande réunion avec les leaders du secteur automobile. Je pense qu'il y a une discussion aussi avec le secteur de l'acier et de l'aluminium pour retourner vers quelque chose qui est plus prévisible. Et comme le ministre Leblanc disait, il va falloir continuer de faire le point à nos amis que la sécurité économique va affecter la sécurité nationale. À un moment donné, ces chaînes d'approvisionnement-là vont arrêter. Vous savez, dans le secteur de l'automobile, de la façon dont on est intégré maintenant, il s'agit de quelques jours avant que les chaînes arrêtent des deux côtés de la frontière. C'est excessivement sérieux. Moi, on a parlé hier avec des gens de l'automobile aux États-Unis qui disaient, Monsieur le ministre, soyons prudents parce que dans quelques jours, les usines américaines pourraient cesser d'opérer. Alors, je pense que notre mission à Washington, comme le ministre Leblanc disait, c'est de ramener ça, c'est de dire les marchés vous ont parlé, l'industrie vous parle, les travailleurs vous parlent. Retournons à une table où on peut s'asseoir, on peut discuter. Et moi, je pense qu'il faut trouver une voie pour trouver un peu une désescalade de ce qu'on a vu dans les derniers jours pour nous ramener dans un terrain où on va être capable de voir des investissements des deux côtés de la frontière.
Just as a reminder, if we can keep the questions and answers brief so we can get through as many as we possibly can. I am looking at you. I believe the finance minister is also looking at you. Rachel Haynes, CTV.
Thank you so much, ministers. I'll direct this to Minister LeBlanc because it's still about the meeting tomorrow. Premier Ford yesterday had said that this was an olive branch from Howard Lutnick, but at the same time, President Trump says he wants to finish the auto industry and also make Canada the 51st state. So how do you trust the U.S. administration going into tomorrow's meeting?
Well, so obviously outrageous comments, and Melanie talked about it from Mr. Trump in that regard, aren't constructive to building an economy that is in the interest of both Canada and the United States, and obviously with our Mexican partners as well. So our focus is not on exaggerated rhetoric. Our focus is on doing the work that Canadian workers and businesses expect their governments to do together. Premier Ford has been an important leader as not only the chair of the Council of the Federation, but as the premier of our biggest province in defending the Canadian economy and the economy of his province. I think it would be irresponsible not to take an opportunity to talk to Howard Lutnick about what we think is important to build a strong North American economy and why we think these continued tariff measures and the necessary and appropriate response that comes from Canada is not a constructive path to be on. If you're like racing to the basement, there's no real prize for being the first person to get to the basement. Like it doesn't feel like the path that we want to be on. I've had with Secretary Lutnick constructive conversations. So this is an opportunity again to figure out, I hope, the best way to get to April 2nd, the decision points that they have set up themselves in a way that protects and promotes economic growth in Canada. And we think done properly, it's also in the interest of the United States as well.
Can I just add to that? I think the strategy is clear. We just need to make sure that we put maximum pressure to defend our jobs, defend our sovereignty, defend our way of living. But meanwhile, as a team negotiating, we need to find off-ramps. And it is just the right thing to do. So we'll do both. That conversation with Howard Lutnick is important. The ones we have, and I'll have with Secretary Rubio as well. So we're doing that in the best interest of Canadians.
Let me just add on the auto sector because you touched something that will really, but that's going to affect hundreds of thousands of people in this country. Trust me, those who are watching are listening to that. Those who are watching, we're going to fight for the auto sector every single day. I spoke to them and I say, Canadians have been there for you. Canadians have been there for the auto sector for decades since we had the Auto Pact. And these companies, most of them, have long-standing commitments to this country. We're going to make sure that they abide by the terms of every single agreements we have with them to make sure we protect the jobs. We had discussion with the union leaders yesterday. and with the representatives from the company, and they truly understand that the reasons they came to Canada is because we have the best worker, it's because Canadians have been there for them, and we have integrated supply chain. So I just want to be clear on the auto sector. Make no mistake that we are already on their back, saying we're going to be watching like hawks as to what may happen to the auto sector, because this is a core industry for the prosperity of this country.
All right, thank you. And Prime Minister, my next question is, Prime Minister-designate Mark Carney had campaigned on dollar-for-dollar retaliatory tariffs. Did he have a say in today's announcement?
Obviously, we took note of what the Prime Minister-designate said in the leadership campaign, but it's also been the position of the Government of Canada to have a strong response to these unjustified measures. So this shouldn't surprise anyone. We have been clear that if the Americans took this unreasonable and unjustified step, Canada would respond as Canadians expect their government to respond. As Melanie and François-Philippe said, we benefit from the support of premiers across the country, of business leaders. But our objective always is to get to a position where the American tariffs are lifted, and all of the tariffs are lifted, and then so too, of course, will be our retaliatory measures. But until the Americans make that decision, we'll continue, as Melanie said, to increase the pressure. None of this is surprising to the American administration. You could have seen this coming. This response was well known and planned for a number of weeks, and we'll continue to do everything we need to do to defend the Canadian economy.
Mylène Crête, La Presse.
Oui, bonjour. Monsieur Champagne, je vous ai entendu dire que vous alliez défendre l'industrie automobile qui est surtout basée en Ontario. Là. Il y a des craintes au Québec que le bois d'œuvre et l'industrie laitière ne seront pas défendus. Quelle garantie votre gouvernement peut donner aux Québécois là-dessus?
Bien, on sera toujours là. Évidemment, je répondais parce que la question concernait le secteur d'automobile, mais c'est clair, on a été aussi en contact avec les secteurs clés de l'économie du Québec, c'est-à-dire l'aérospatiale, l'industrie forestière, évidemment. J'allais dire même de la question de la sécurité alimentaire est venue aussi dans nos discussions. Non, il faut être clair, on va être là à chaque tournant pour défendre. Puis les gens le savent parce qu'on a déjà joué, malheureusement, dans cet épisode-là. Vous savez, on s'est déjà tenu debout. L'industrie forestière, vous savez, je parlais à M. Chrétien, des enjeux dans le bois d'œuvre, on en a depuis plusieurs décennies, puis on a toujours gagné. Vous savez, c'est ça l'enjeu. Dans le bois d'œuvre, on a toujours gagné. Quand les règles du jeu sont claires, on gagne. On l'a vu récemment au hockey. Nous, ce qu'on veut rétablir avec le ministre Leblanc puis avec la ministre Joly, c'est évidemment d'avoir des règles claires du jeu. Parce qu'une fois qu'on aura des règles qui sont claires, que ce soit dans les différents secteurs de l'économie, on pourra évidemment s'adapter, mais on pourra aussi gagner. Alors, c'est clair qu'on va être là pour défendre ces secteurs-là. Et ça va être des enjeux qu'on va certainement soulever dans la réunion avec le secrétaire Lotnick.
Et vous parliez, Madame Joly, d'unité là, dans la réponse. Oh, oui. vous parliez dans votre réponse d'unité canadienne. Là, c'est important d'être unis dans notre réponse là, aux tarifs douaniers américains. Est-ce qu'il y a vraiment une unité quand Doug Ford semble faire cavalier seul, comme ça a été le cas hier?
Je pense que, premièrement, aujourd'hui, on arrive avec une réponse forte, une réponse coordonnée au sein du gouvernement fédéral, une réponse qui a été travaillée aussi depuis quand même quelques semaines. On savait depuis quelques semaines que des tarifs sur l'acier et l'aluminium pouvaient être mis en place, donc on s'est préparé. Donc, comme le disait mon collègue Leblanc, il n'y a pas de surprise. En même temps, ce que je pense que les premiers ministres et tout le monde au pays... ce qu'on fait présentement, c'est qu'on essaie de trouver quels sont nos leviers pour mettre de la pression, pour envoyer un message, pour faire réagir, premièrement, le peuple américain, qui est ultimement notre grand allié, pour mettre de la pression sur l'administration Trump. Et donc, dans ces circonstances-là, je pense qu'on peut démontrer qu'on a une réponse qui est forte et coordonnée, puis qu'on va faire reculer l'administration Trump. On est dans une bataille existentielle. Existentielle pour nos jobs, existentielle pour les familles qui dépendent de ces jobs et existentielle pour notre souveraineté. C'est pas juste une question économique, c'est ultimement l'avenir de notre pays qui est en jeu. Et donc, moi, je suis fière de la réponse canadienne de façon générale. Well, this is not only a threat to Canadian jobs, not only a threat to so many families that are supported by these jobs, it is an existential threat to our country. And we will fight for every single job, we'll fight for families, and we'll fight for who we are as a country, because this is not only about the economy, it is about the future of our country.
David Aiken, Global. Okay. We'll go to David Baxter from the Canadian Press.
There we go. So we can actually get the interpretation on there. Should we be reading anything, especially trying to build better relations with Europe and more new alliances there? Should we read anything into the French submarine that surfaced near Halifax yesterday?
We are having lots of conversations with Europeans right now. I'll be meeting with the foreign ministers from, of course, Germany, France, Italy, the foreign minister of the EU, as well as the British one. And I know that the Prime Minister designate is going to reach out to many of our European friends. But let's all remember that not only Prime Minister Trudeau at the time, myself also, we went to Europe to coordinate this very response on aluminum and steel tariffs with the EU. And so we're seeing the reaction of the EU today on steel and aluminum. When it comes to defense, to your very question, you know, we're NATO allies. We work together. We cooperate on military exercises. And we want to do more with Europe. And we want to do more with defense procurement also with Europe. And so these are all parts of the conversations we're having. As for your specific question, I think Bill Blair, who's a fantastic Minister of Defense, can also answer you.
Go on to the next person.
Raymond Filion, TVA.
I'm the lucky one. Bonjour. Question pour Mme Joly. Vous avez parlé en anglais de Marco Rubio. Vous allez accueillir à compter de ce soir dans Charlevoix. Qu'est-ce que vous allez lui dire au sujet de ses droits de douane américains, de un, et aussi la question de la souveraineté du Canada, 51e État et les menaces de M. Trump? Est-ce que vous avez l'intention d'aborder cette question-là aussi?
Ben, c'est pas la première fois que je le soulève avec le secrétaire d'État Rubio. Je l'ai fait encore la semaine passée, lorsque je lui ai dit que tout ce qui était lié à la rhétorique du 51e État, ça passait pas. Puis, non seulement à l'époque, il m'a rassuré sur cette question-là, il m'a également dit que la coopération au sein de NORAD allait continuer. Marco Rubio va revenir d'Arabie saoudite. Il va avoir eu des conversations avec la délégation ukrainienne. On va parler beaucoup des questions liées à l'Ukraine et du fameux cessez-le-feu de 30 jours qui est présentement potentiellement sur la table pour être négocié. Mais au niveau de la souveraineté canadienne, je veux dire, c'est pas compliqué, là. C'est même pas à négocier. C'est une question, vous arrivez dans notre pays, vous respectez notre coutume et notre approche et bien entendu notre souveraineté. Comme j'ai dit tantôt, la stratégie est la même avec tous nos interlocuteurs. Pression maximale, diplomatie efficace. So the strategy is the same with every single of our interlocutors. It will be maximum pressure and very, how can I say efficace? How do you say that? Effective. Okay, so let me do that quote again. So the strategy with our American counterparts will be the same. It is going to be maximum pressure and efficient diplomacy.
Avec la nouvelle de ce matin concernant Northvolt, est-ce que la Chine pourrait prendre la relève dans le dossier de l'usine au Québec?
Non.
Alors, qu'est-ce qui arrive maintenant avec l'usine, avec
Alors,
la nouvelle d'aujourd'hui?
je voulais être très clair aussi pour cette question-là. La réponse est clairement non. Évidemment, ce qu'on voit avec Northvolt, je comprends les préoccupations légitimes des gens. On est en discussion pour essayer de voir si on ne pourrait pas retrouver une solution, parce que moi, je pense que, je l'ai toujours dit, l'usine de Northvolt au Québec, c'est important. la profitabilité de Northvolt passe par l'usine nord-américaine, parce qu'on sait que le marché nord-américain, c'est le marché le plus important. Alors, je pourrais vous dire qu'il y a des discussions en coulisses pour essayer de trouver un repreneur, probablement, dans cette situation-là. Alors, on est en discussion présentement, puis évidemment, la compagnie aura plus à dire, j'imagine, dans les prochains jours. Puis nous, on fait notre travail en coulisses, justement, pour aider à voir comment on peut préserver cet actif-là chez nous, parce que je pense que, vous savez, il y a toujours le court terme, le moyen terme et le long terme. Il y a une situation financière à court terme, mais je pourrais vous dire, j'ai expliqué à nos amis européens, comme la ministre Joly le fait, comment c'était important, alors qu'on est en train de diversifier notre économie, d'avoir un partenariat transatlantique, d'avoir un manufacturier européen qui soit le leader dans le domaine des batteries. Moi, je pense que qu'ils aient choisi le Québec, qu'ils aient choisi le Canada pour servir le marché nord-américain, alors qu'on est justement dans une crise existentielle. Moi, je souhaite que cet investissement-là continue, puis je peux vous assurer qu'on y met l'effort pour essayer de trouver des partenaires pour continuer l'investissement.
Tana McCharles, The Star.
Clarification. Can you talk about the 30, let's round it up, 30 billion that you've announced today on top of the 30 billion previously? That's, I assume, part of that 155 billion overall package that Canada said it would target eventually, right? It's not an additional 30 on top of 155. Is that correct?
That's right.
Okay. So that's not my question. I just wanted that clarified.
Oh, so that, well, let me, that's
no,
one
that's
question. Okay.
That's just a clarification. Thanks.
Okay.
Mr. LeBlanc, what do you understand to be the incoming Prime Minister, Mr. Carney's, strategy to deal with Trump? You talked about your ideas, but I'd like, since you're his now finance minister and frontline person dealing with it, what can Canadians expect in the weeks ahead?
So obviously, technically, the premise of your question is not accurate. Mr. Carney will be sworn in with his cabinet sometime in the coming days, so I just don't want to accept the premise of those questions, and I certainly don't want to speak for our new boss. I think Mr. Carney has been quite effective in saying to Canadians that the government, his government, needs to take a firm response, a strong response. Your colleague talked about his public comments around a dollar-for-dollar response to these tariffs, which is what we're doing today. But I have every confidence that he's exactly the right leader at this moment to continue to take a tough, responsible, proportionate position with respect to these unjustified American tariffs, but also to lead the Canadian economy to a position where these tariffs are lifted and we have a stronger economy that's less dependent on this obviously unpredictable context.
Can I add to that? Yeah. I think Mr. Carney is a serious person, a serious man, and he'll engage only if there are serious talks.
And as a follow-up then, you talked about the need to find off-ramps, and yet you also talked about the need for Canada to use its levers to exert maximum pressure. And given that energy is such a powerful lever, to what extent are you prepared to put tariffs on, export tariffs on energy?
We've received that question at nearly every single press conference since we've been dealing with these threats of tariffs. No, but listen, Tonda, I'm answering your question. And we've said from the beginning that there were two things. First, everything was on the table. And second, we needed to keep strong Canadian unity in the face of Americans being divided. And so that will be our strategy going forward, and as it has been since the past weeks.
Donna, may I say, this is negotiation 101. We've been negotiating quite a bit in this country. We know how to negotiate. When you get in a negotiation with the Trump administration, we've been in that movie before, in the last Trump administration. I don't think it would be smart as a nation to start putting things off the table as you entering a negotiation 101. I'd suggest, if you read the heart of the deal, you'd realize that you're not coming to the table already brushing off a lot of things. I think, as Melanie said, we've been very consistent, and I would be We need to focus on the issues that are currently on the table. And our mission, I would say, when Dominic and I are going to go, and there'll be future meetings, this is just one of them. We need to provide certainty. What I hear from folks is that this is now the Far West on the factory floor. We can operate an economy like that. We cannot operate a country like that. The industry cannot stand that for many more weeks. So the mission we're going to have is to restore certainty, stability, and predictability. Because you know what? What is happening, and just look at the market reaction to what has been happening. It's making us less competitive, less attractive, and certainly this is not the time, at a time where national security is at the forefront, that we weaken our competitiveness. We need to build ships, we need to build planes, we need to build infrastructure. That's what, I was about to say. Mr. Carney has said, he's been very clear. We're going to invest in our military, we're going to build infrastructure, we're going to be the most resilient economy in the G7.
Unfortunately, that's all the time we have for questions today.
We were ready to
I already got it.
Oh, really?
we're not.
I need to go to Charlevoix, guys.
But you're not going to come tomorrow if we say everything today. That's the problem.
Can you just explain?
Ça peut changer. Demain, ça peut être totalement différent.
Can you coordinate with any other U.S. allies other than Europe?